Well, Leanne, why don't we go ahead and get things started here?
I knew you were going to say that. Hi, everybody, and happy Monday. Happy Dr. Martin Luther King Day as well. Just want to welcome you guys back to our Tiny Talks. We've missed you. Just want to let you know you are being recorded because, as you know, if you've been on before, oh, shoot, forgot to do not disturb my phone. Anyway, you are being recorded because we upload these to our member portal for our members to watch them because not everybody can be here at 5 o'clock. And so we have that. And then also, if you have any questions for Joshua with Tiny House Basics, you can ask them while he's presenting. You can either raise your hand or you can put a question in the chat. If you have anything you want to say for the end, that would be fine too. I'll ask the question for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin. And thank you for being with us, Joshua.
Thank you.
What's up? What's up, everybody? Hello, hello. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Happy to have you here. We are excited to be doing another week's worth of Tiny Talks, starting out with a Builder Day today. And yeah, today we have Joshua with us from Tiny House Basics that does not only do trailers, but also does houses and build some. So anyway, normally we like to walk through the shop or walk through some houses or things like that. But right now, today, we're not going to be doing that. We're going to might be looking at some photographs. But if you have any questions either about trailers or about tiny houses, please bring them up. So with that said, Joshua, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Ingberg. I'm owner with my wife of our company, Tiny House Basics. We started in mid-2014, we started around our own personal tiny house journey. I had a background in metal fabrication, custom trailers. I came from the aeronautical industry. That's where I was trained. My wife was in interior design, and we set out to build our own tiny house. Back in the day, 28 feet was the biggest tiny house that you could possibly imagine. And so we set our sights on a 28-foot tiny house. And we were going to build the trailer frame ourselves, since we've done that before on smaller scales, and we were in a rental. And so anyway, we designed, short stories, we designed the trailer frame, and we were going to build it. But then we were kind of thinking, well, since it's a 28-foot trailer, it's so big, it's going to be kind of hard to manage in our driveway, dealing with 28-foot long, beams for the main frame. Maybe I'll just contract it out to have the trailer built by someone. After a lot of, back and forth and looking for factories to do that, we finally partnered with a small family-run factory to build our specific designs and frames. And that is kind of how the company started. Is we design the trailers, we have about 390 different models now. So we do anything from 10 feet all the way up to like 52 feet by 12-foot wide goosenecks. And we custom build everything. Everything is built to order. We do have trailers that are like most popular models, but even so, as long as we've been doing this around 8 years, we still truly tailor each trailer build to our DIY builders or even our, tiny house builders on specifically what they need. So there's never really any, not too many parameters we're forcing people to stick to on their trailers. But we build it custom and handle whatever, we build around 400 to 450 trailers a year. And those can be, tailored to our builders and DIY builders across the country. Of course, we'll guide and direct them for certain capacities, loads and, designs, but there is that true freedom that people can, because every tiny house, as you guys have seen, they're totally different. So the trailer needs can be very specific to those different design criteria. and layouts and everything like that. So that is the heart of what we do. Custom tiny house trailer foundations for DIYs and builders. On a very limited basis, we will build tiny house shells in California. We've been doing that since 2015. And it really, the whole idea for the shell really came from, there's only one other company that did it at the time, and they called them barn raisers, and they're tumbleweed, which everybody's familiar with tumbleweed. So we kind of coined the term shell as kind of a reference to like a turtle shell. And so with nothing on the inside, so just a hollow shell. And it was kind of that bridging the gap from somebody that we wanted to empower people to still build their own tiny houses, but we would take care of the framing. And so, yeah, we would build the custom shells, and we still do that on a very limited basis. It's really around like 6 to 10 a year. It takes a lot of time, and design and everything like that. So that's still an option for people, but primarily what we do is we're trying to empower people to build their own. The shell idea almost kind of came from is we just kind of wanted some more pictures of our builds on our trailers. And so that's kind of where the shells kind of started. And it's kind of always been a small subset of what we do. But, with our trailers, we're always offer lifetime consulting for our customers on helping them through their builds. Any questions they have, we've been in the industry for a good amount of time and seen the trends change. And we always kind of go based off our own kind of data set on what we're seeing people buy or people configure on how we see the movement kind of change. I think there was a good amount of period of time where people wanted to have everything built, but I think we are definitely with inflation over the past year and COVID, people are really wanting to take that power back into their hands and get kind of how it used to be in the beginning of the tiny house movement of building yourself, whether you have a builder do the shell, like some of the builders on this chat today, but kind of empowering the DIY person to take care of their build. So, but yeah, so we're happy to answer any questions when it comes to trailers, tiny houses, any of that. So yeah, there's a.
Let me ask a couple of questions here, Joshua. When you're talking about, the goosenecks, the bigger builds and that kind of stuff, I know you mentioned something about 10-foot wide and 12-foot wide, and then you have your 8-foot or 8'6" wide, obviously. What do you mostly see being built right now? Are they wider units? Are they bigger units? Or are they still in that 200 square foot, 8 by 28 or 8 by 30?
Majority of trailers we build are 30 feet and larger, and they are mostly 10 feet wide, I would say. We're kind of at that split of like, it's probably maybe like 55% are 10 feet wides, and then 45, are 8 feet wides. But majority of people are doing 30 feet and larger. There's still a good amount of 28s. That used to be kind of the king or the most trailers we build, but 30 feet, 32, 34, 36, those by 10 feet wide are really kind of like our popular size. And, we found, our own living experience, you just have so much more room to, when it comes to design, practicality for long-term tiny house living in a small space with a 10-foot wide trailer. We've been in ours and, ours that here for 8 years, and it's a 28-foot by 8-foot wide. And honestly, if we could have done it all over, we just didn't have 10-foot wide axles back then. It wasn't even a thing that we knew about. But if we could do it all over again, we would have done a 10-foot wide, because it's just, there's, we, especially in the winter, with all these storms that we've had, sometimes it feels like a tight little hallway, and it's like the 10-foot wide has so much more room for flexibility and design and moving around other people, so that's why when we started the project of we're building another tiny house, and it's kind of be an addition to our house, and it is a 30 by 10. And so that is actually going to be everything but the bedroom. But we being that we still love living in our tiny house, and we love what this lifestyle is, afforded us, but we just needed more space. And, so I think people are people just need to be, we recommend people to be realistic with what they need and not have to fit into like a certain, amount of square feet. Sometimes, we got criticized a lot in the early days of being like, oh, it's not a tiny house, that's a mobile home. And I'm like, you know what, you do you, we're the ones living in it. We're going to do what we feel is practical for us. And yeah, and we've seen that trend too with like people that are planning to, most people are not moving with their tiny houses. So whether it's 10 feet wide or 12 feet wide, transporting is not an issue when you're having a professional transporter. But, to make it practical for long term, I really recommend the 10 feet wide. And then if you're thinking about a VRBO or Airbnb, 10 feet wide is really practical for a short-term rental. And now we do have a good amount of older generation that wants to have a single level tiny house with no stairs. And that could be either on a deck over trailer, which is the flat deck over the wheels. But 10 feet wide is even more practical for that size, So yeah, so
So the difference between the 8'6" and the 10, it mainly is travel over the highways without a special use permit with the 8'6" or 8 foot wide. Although most people aren't using them as RVs to travel with, they live in them, year round, full time, Airbnb them. They go someplace, stay there, maybe move once or twice. When you're doing a 10-foot wide, you get a transport company to move it, but you can still move it without an escort, just put a wide load. Is that the way it is in your area? And then once you go to the 12-foot wide, you need an escort. Is that how that works?
Exactly. So if you go, if you want to get down to it, if you go 11 feet, 10 inches or 11 feet, 11 inches, the outside of the house and stay smaller than that, then you just need a wide load permit. You don't need pilot cars. And even in very strict states, so some of the most strict states we have to move trailers through is New Mexico. And they're like, they're hanging out like near the Carlsbad Caverns, like, ready to pounce on people, any type of transporter. But when you hit that 12-foot mark or 144 inches, you need pilot cars front and back. And those can be, the customer, when we've moved tiny houses that are 12 feet wide, we acted as a pilot car. You just need pilot cars. But if you keep it at 11 feet 11 or under, you just have the wide load permit. And that ranges anywhere from $14 to like $35, and you have to have it for each state, but it's a pretty simple process.
Right. So, yeah, so let me clarify there. So I thought it was 10 foot, over 10 foot, but it's not over 10 foot. It's over 11 foot 11 when you get into the pilot cars. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, good tip there, Joshua. I think that's a great tip. Something else I thought maybe we could talk about. Can you talk about the difference in the finished height of the top of the trailer between a drop axle, a straight axle, and a deck over?
Yeah, so the most popular trailer, or just the default trailer, is going to be a standard deck, which is a 26-inch high deck height. And then you're going to have the fenders that are exposed that are going to be higher than the deck height. Those fenders are 10 inches above the 26-inch high deck. If you get optional drop axles, which you can do on any size trailer, whether it's 10 feet, 8 feet wide, the drop axles actually lower the trailer deck 22 inches. So the trailer deck is actually dropping, lower. The fender will still stay the relative height to the ground because the tire is still going to be the same. It's just the axle is actually dropping. So with a drop axle, the deck will be 22 inches. And then the fender height will be 14 because it's staying the same. It's just the difference is dropping between the two. That's the most popular option for people because you have a lower approach height, easier on the knees. You have more headroom inside the loft, which is really where you're getting that 4 inches of extra height, where it's going to come into play. And then the other option, which is a deck over, which is the least popular, but it does have its very specific use cases. A deck over will have a 36-inch high deck. So it needs to cover the wheels. So it's a flat deck over the wheels, and it kind of encapsulates them. It kind of goes around the wheels, but you're going to have a flat surface to build on. So you won't have any issues with, like, as we kind of call, like, a danger zone. Like, you can have, a door going over the wheels because, it's flat. You can have windows just anywhere. You're not going to have any obstructions when it comes to framing. So that is a really popular style when you're doing a single level tiny house. You're not doing lofts because you would lose that height in the loft. And then, we're building our second house on a deck over, 30 by 10 deck over. And we have these just huge accordion doors that are actually spanning where, the wheels are. So that is, a great opportunity to use the deck over. And if you're single level, you have kind of a unique design that you need to not be restricted by where the wheels are. So those are the 3 different styles of decks. And
the only difference meaning would be in the deck over that you would need a higher set of steps coming up into it. You'd need 36 inches worth of steps, whereas with a drop axle, you need 22 inches, or the regular straight axle would be 26 inches. Let me share my screen just a little bit, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on in Colorado. They are putting in standards for tiny houses. Now, let me say that the tiny houses built as RVs, put into RV parks and things like that are still going to be exactly the same. No changes in Colorado to that effect. The only difference is you can't live in them full-time. They're enforcing that full-time habitation rule, but they are making a way for tiny houses to be built to IRC and be an Appendix Q and be built full-time. So what they're talking about when we're talking about lofts, that's their drawing on the loft, which is right straight out of Appendix Q. But they're talking about a landing, an intermediate landing is what they're calling it. The bottom of the stairs shall comply with this, except the depth in the direction of the travel shall not be less than 24 inches. So I'm thinking that's not at the bottom of the stairs. It's got to be at the top of the stairs. The intermediate landings and landings at the bottom. Okay, so the intermediate landing or a landing at the bottom of the stairs. I see what they're saying. But not less than 24 inches in the direction of travel. So basically, when you're designing a tiny house and you're getting up into your loft, you're going to have to build in a 24-inch wide landing right at the top of that stair. And then they're requiring 6'2" from that landing up to the top. And the landing platform shall be not less than 16 inches and not greater than 18 inches. Can anybody tell me if this is going to work in a tiny house on wheels? Let me help out here a little bit. 6'4", if your kitchens and baths, the lowest ceiling height you can have is 6'4". So that's going to be the lowest ceiling that you have. So 12 times 6 is what, 72? And 4 is 76. So you got 76 inches, and you can go down from that. Well, you have to add 4 inches for your floor. So you got 80 inches. You got 80 inches minus the 18 inches that you can go down. Minus 18. So now we're at 62 inches. No, that's not right. That's not right. It's 80 inches. 80 inches. I know what it is. It's 80. Let's do this. 80 inches minus your 22 inches for your drop axle, or add to it. You got 22 inches for your drop axle. So plus 22. So that's 102 inches in height. And what's a 13'6"? Well, you have to have 6 inches for your rafters and everything. So you got 13 feet, 12 feet's 144. So that'd be 156. So it would be 52 inches is the height of your loft, right? If I'm figuring that right. And then you can only go down the maximum of 18 inches. But the other thing is you got to have 6'2", and it just doesn't work even with a drop axle, even with 6'4" and even with, trying to keep everything as tight as possible. It doesn't work in these numbers here with the Colorado. And so we're trying to get them to understand that if you're going to use Appendix Q, this isn't going to fly as far as being able to put a loft in a tiny house on wheels.
Hey, Robin.
Yeah.
Can I say something? This
Yeah.
is Peter from Indigo River Tiny Homes. We're already doing this. You've seen our designs where we have the stand-up lofts, but the height of your stairs, your storage stairs, with this rule is only going to be about 4.5 feet tall. So then you're going to have, and if you're, let's say that, and typically we put the bed platform or your crawl-in loft level, the top of that, the floor of that loft is at 7 feet from the floor, from the bottom floor, right? Which gives you about 6.5 feet underneath the loft. And so at if your crawl-in loft or your bed platform is at 7 feet, and the top of your stairs where your landing is at 4.5 feet, then you've got 2.5 feet but discrepancy there. So you're going to need another step to get up into that, space, which is, we end up building having like a little built-in ladder step basically in the side wall there for people to make that extra transition. So yeah, it can work, but it's not the way that most builders are doing it, because most builders are doing, even if they do have a landing at the top of their stairs, they're building those probably about 5 or 6 feet tall at least. So that's probably 6 feet tall. So there's only a 1 foot step up into that loft, right?
Right. So, and plus, if that landing, is there, at 7 feet, that landing would be a little bit less than 7 feet if you dropped 18 inches off of it. So let's just say the top of the loft is at 7 feet and you drop 1'6" off of that. That's 5'6", and you got to have 6'2" headroom. So 5 and 6 is 11, and then you have your slope, and you have for the roof, because usually you have, well, it depends on which side you put your landing.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You're going to have to come down probably about at least 2.5 feet
from your loft
to get that from the loft to get that 6'2" of height on that top landing.
Okay, I hear it, and I agree. So the bottom line is you can't get the 6'2" and can't get the landing and the 18 inches into your loft. It just won't, logistically just will not work out when you're building a tiny house on a trailer that's 22 inches off the ground. If you're building a tiny house on a foundation on a slab, yeah, it works fine. But because you're fighting that 13.6 all the way, where you put the numbers together, this formula just doesn't work. Thanks, Peter. All right. The other thing I want to point out to you guys is, see if I can find it here. They're talking about the trailers, and so Joshua, you'd be interested in the trailers. They're going to have to do a blower door test. Oh, here it is. Let me make this smaller. Can you guys see this where it says construction for a built for purpose trailer? It says tiny home will be built on a built for purpose trailer. Trailers that have a structure modifications prior to the start of the tiny home must provide engineered stamped drawings and documentation to be roadworthy on Colorado roads. What does that mean? Can you help me with that, Joshua?
I'm not really sure what that second sentence is saying, because it's saying trailers that have structural modifications prior to the start of a tiny home built. It almost seems like as in, yeah, it needs to be on a purpose-built trailer, but then if you do have a trailer that was purposed for something else and you had structural modifications, then you need to provide an engineered stamp drawing and documentation. So that second part is a little bit confusing. It's almost describing like two different types of circumstances for trailers. You have a purpose-built one, and then if you're modifying, say, an RV trailer or a car hauler, modifying it, you need to have engineered drawings provided on that one. So it's not totally clear. So I don't really know. Yeah, because I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to say with that. Yeah, then it's also talking about a homemade trailer and a new VIN. So it almost seems like it's referring to maybe a trailer that has had a previous life and then modified for a tiny house, then providing a new VIN number for it, so
Okay. Well,
it feels like
here's a question for you. If you get a trailer, and usually you get you don't get a title, you get a what is it called? Help me out here, guys.
It's an MSO, manufacturer statement of origin.
Yeah, that's right. And so you get a statement of origin for the and this as a utility trailer, and now you're going to build a tiny house on it, and you're going to bolt it to it and everything, and now it's changed from a utility to an RV, and the title changes, the VIN changes. Does that mean that the trailer now has to be engineered?
Well, the VIN doesn't change. So a manufacturer statement of origin is a title, but not issued by the state. So it's basically saying here's your title for the trailer. What you do with the manufacturer statement of origin when you register the trailer, you turn in your MSO. You're basically trading it to the state, and then they're issuing a title that you paid taxes, license, and fees on. Same VIN number, same description. And then they're giving you that title that is issued to the state. So a title is tying the trailer to a specific state, and MSO is the manufacturer title, but that can go to any state. So that's kind of how that process works. But it's still the same VIN number, and you don't trade any VINs, or the VIN does not change. So it's the same VIN number, rating. Everything is.
But does it change from a utility trailer to an RV at that point?
No, the only way, from what we've seen is you could change. No, this type of trailer doesn't change when you're titling it. If you bring in, like in California, for instance, if you build the tiny house and you want to change it to a coach, which is kind of how California calls like a tiny house, you would bring in your title, your already registered trailer title. You turn it in, and then you would get an inspection on the whole structure. And then you could change your titling to an RV coach with a yearly registration if you want to travel and, move your tiny house often. Majority of people are keeping them as, permanent trailer identification. So it's kind of like, it depends on if you want to travel with the tiny house, or you are keeping it in a park or something like that. So they may, California may, or not California, but Colorado may, I don't know if they're going to be having a tiny home specific name for a trailer, once it's registered, but still we kind of run into that issue of like, you can't say classify the trailer as a tiny house until the house is built on top of it. Then you could reclassify it, but it doesn't change the VIN or any type of pertinent info like the gross vehicle weight rating or whatever like that. So it feels like this construction or this thing is referring to homemade trailers or something like that, because
Homemade trailers or trailers that were repurposed. They were
Yeah,
one
like-
trailer of one
It-
kind and changed.
yeah, because you can go down to Harbor Freight and you can get the trailer kit. You can order trailer kits and put them together, and those are kit trailers, and then apply for a registration on it as a kit or a homemade trailer. So it feels like it's talking about two different things, but it definitely needs some clarification on that.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. And anybody else have any questions regarding this? So basically what I'm hearing you say, and I think Colorado's trying to say that if you buy a trailer from Joshua, from Tiny House Basics, that you don't have to have engineered stamp drawings and documentation to prove that it's roadworthy on Colorado roads. But if you build, you modify one or you build one yourself, you do. Is that what you think everybody's saying? And I can try to clarify that a little bit later when I talk to Mo or Sam, but what do you guys feel this is saying regarding a trailer that you buy from a trailer manufacturer? And oh, by the way, are you engineering your trailers? How do you know how big of a main rail and cross members and stuff to put in there?
So we can do engineered drawings. They are extra and they can cost some money if you want to engineer a specific size and configuration. On all of our trailers, we always overbuild them on size that is needed. For instance, like we are doing a 28 plus 26 plus 8-foot gooseneck by 10 and an 1/8 inch, box tube is more than sufficient for the mainframe, but we always up it. Like that one, we bumped up to a 1/4 inch, which is a huge beam for the mainframe.
What does that mean, a box frame? You mean a tube steel?
Oh, yeah, the tube steel mainframe for the trailer that the axles are sitting on and the gooseneck
Right.
hitch too. So we always upsize the frame size to overbuild our trailers.
So you have 2-inch by 5-inch or 2-inch by 6-inch, or how big is your tube steel?
2-inch by 6-inch until we get up to like around the 36-foot, and then we'll go 2x8 box.
2x8. Okay. All right.
And
And then if you do that, you might as well go to ANSI 119.5, where they spec out an 8-inch 6-pound I-beam.
Mhm.
I don't know which one would be more cost effective, but that's what they spec out.
We'll do I-beams on a deck over, and they'll usually be 10 inches, generally the smallest I-beam that we'll do when we're doing an I-beam.
Mhm.
Kind of along those lines about the construction and the titling, kind of reminds me of how Hawaii handles this. And so when we do the title or the MSO, we can say whatever you want. Like if it, a lot of times we would do it as tiny home trailer 30 by 10 or, T or something. Hawaii, when we do the MSOs for customers in Hawaii, we found that if it says tiny home on it, like Tiny House Trailer Foundation, Hawaii, the DMV didn't like that. They want it to just say what it is, like 30 by 10 capacity. They didn't want it to be Tiny House Trailer because they said they can't address the tiny house part until the house is built and then people bring back registration to it. So even though they said they know it's a purpose-built trailer for a tiny house foundation, they didn't want it to say tiny house trailer on it because it was confusing for the DMV because we were registering the customer at that time was registering the trailer foundation and not the full house. So they were saying that when you build the house and you bring it back to the DMV, if you want to change registration, which barely anybody did in Hawaii, then they would put tiny house on the title, but it would still be same VIN number, all the same specs and everything like that. It would just have the buzzword, so to speak, of tiny house on there. Got
it. And just to point out, everywhere in this, it says home, not tiny house. They were specific on that if we're going to give you a CO, we're going to call it a home, not a tiny house. So that was something that they did. And while we're here on this page, we did have a discussion about tiny homes. If the bathroom lavatory cannot be added due to size constraints, then the kitchen sink can be substituted to meet the Lavy requirements. And so what they did there was some discussion going back and forth saying, no, I don't want to wash my hands in the kitchen sink. That's a food preparation place, that kind of thing. And then the discussion went, well, there's a lot of RVs that are built with just, the one kitchen sink, and so finally they landed on this, that yes, in fact, if you're got tight quarters and you can't get a bathroom lavy or a bathroom sink, which is the same thing, in the bathroom itself, usually you have a toilet and a shower, and then there's a door there, and you open the door and there's the kitchen, and the kitchen sink is right there, that you can actually use that kitchen sink for your lavy requirement, because every bathroom has to have a place to wash up your hands. Now, what that does is it eliminates one whole 12 amp circuit in your tiny house. Because if you're building a tiny house and you put a sink in the bathroom, that has to be a designated 12 amp GFCI circuit for that. You can't have it on the outside outlets. You can't have it on the over the kitchen outlets that are GFCI GFCI. Anyway, whatever it is, you cannot do that if you're going to have a bathroom sink in there. You have to have a designated, a dedicated line, 12 amp circuit there. So that's one of the things that it does by eliminating the requirement for a lavy in the bathroom area, for those of you that are interested in how that plays out long term. And that's enough of talking about Colorado, but I just thought it was kind of some interesting things that they're bringing and causing to come down, especially on the trailer side of things. Whether whether all of the trailer manufacturers will have to have all of their units that come into Colorado engineered or not. And it looks like, based on what we just talked about, that that's not true.
Catherine has had her hand up. I apologize, Catherine.
That's okay,
not-
honey.
What?
We don't want to interrupt. I get it.
Yeah, I'm bad. I'm really bad at interrupting. My
well,
mama taught me.
I am very patient when it comes down to it. So, and I just wanted to share, Robin, that I think in a lot of ways, what I hear in that code, being that I'm on the user end of this, is safety. They just want to know that the trailer is equipped to be safe, is what I take away from that. Because, now with a deck over, I have a 24-foot deck over. So if I wanted to, that I could easily turn that into a tiny home, and I can't comprehend why they would want me to have it re-engineered, because I haven't changed anything except what I put on top of it. But with the rest of the trailers, when you start making modifications structurally, I think they're just trying to look out for people, not only the tiny home dweller, but the people on the highways that are driving alongside of them. And that was just a thought that I wanted to share.
And we had an engineer on here talking about trailers and foundations and things like that. And the point being that when you set up your tiny house in a park or on a piece of property, you might have 4 or 5 piers on each side supporting that tiny house along the way there. So you have to have the engineering and everything designed. So how far apart do you have to put your piers and that kind of a thing. But then you also have to design the trailer and make it strong enough so that if you have a single axle or a double axle or a triple axle, you have those force points, where the wheels meet the road, and then you have your tongue. And so the entire house is supported in basically 3 different locations. You don't have the piers along the way, and which, when you get into the 30 and 36 foot and 38 foot long homes, obviously there could be a tendency for them to bow or sag if you don't have the main structural beam heavy enough to support something like that. And maybe they do sag. I know some of them overkill and turn them the other way. So when the weight goes on them, they turn down. So I know that
Well, you
tractor
know,
trailers are built like that.
as an example, for mine is a 20-foot dovetail trailer that I bought for my monster truck. And let's say I had a friend of mine that said, like, would turn it into a 24, we'll just weld some stuff onto it and extend it out. And we were just in the backyard with a welder, and that's one of the things I personally worry about from the things I've learned from NOAA in the importance of what we do, what we should require. I'm afraid a year from now how many people we find out, their house collapsed because they didn't have the beam between for the long length, and all of these things that anyone can just say they built this thing, and that's why we are ASTM members and why we're involved. And I think you're right about the loft issue. I think that's something we need to bring up to the board, because if you can't make the numbers work, what's the point in having the numbers?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I think about the safety issue is such a good point, because there has been a good amount of builders out there that and I still see them now in California, that have built tiny houses on trailers that had a previous life as an RV or another thing. And then the end user is buying what they think is a tiny house. And then I could easily see, like, based off the rims, look like they're from the 70s, these frames are old. And I've actually seen these houses buckle and collapse on the road. So I feel like Colorado in a way is saying, like, hey, you're either get a trailer specifically built for a tiny house, or if you are doing a trailer that has modified from its previous life, we need engineered drawings and need a new VIN. Because I could build a tiny house on, I have an old military trailer, and then you run it through the DMV and they're like, nothing about this says a tiny house. This says it's a 1940 or 1952 M416, so I think that it's that point of safety. And if you're going to modify something that was intended for something, you need to reclassify it and do a new VIN, so they know what they're seeing, when they're just typing in the number. So I think that sounds like, after this discussion, is what they're trying to do, is you can modify an old trailer, but you need to do these extra steps. So it seems like it makes sense just to get something purpose built, than it would be to modify, because an old 70s, mobile home could be built on, 3, 3,500 pound axles or something like that, and a new tiny house is going to be built with better materials, and it's going to exceed that. And therefore, it'll collapse. I mean, we've seen it many times. So,
especially when we're talking about things that are going to be traveling on the interstate. I mean, can you imagine being in your car and driving 80 down the road, and then all of a sudden the tiny house you're next to is coming apart or wrecking you? I mean, that is not something that we want. That's going to hurt our industry, not help us. So I think it's the whole point of this is to be safe and to make sure everybody understands we need to be safe.
Agreed.
And what I tell everyone is, when they ask, can we take an old RV trailer and modify it and use it and for my tiny house? And my answer usually is you can, but by the time you make the modifications, first of all, get all the engineering done. And their engineers are not cheap. I mean, you're going to spend $1,000 or more dollars just to get an engineer involved there. And then you've got to do all the work, the heavy up of the axles, the heavy up of the mainframe, and all. You might as well just go ahead to a trailer manufacturer and get something that's built specifically for a tiny house on wheels. And financially and safety-wise, you'll be ahead of the game. And that's kind of my conversation with people that want to build on an old RV trailer.
Yeah, we always say, once you build the tiny house, you can't change the trailer. So is it really worth that, maybe $500-$600 savings in the long run for that peace of mind? I mean, it's not. It's just like, you got so many other things to worry about over the course of your build, things to think about. You don't want to worry about, can this hold what I want to put on it? There's just a lot of other stuff to worry about. And if you get something that exceeds what you're planning on doing, a specific tiny house trailer, you never have to question it again. You have something brand new. It didn't have this undisclosed life before it, because I've always felt like I've always had trailers. And when I have a utility trailer, like when I get to the point where selling it, like that trailer doesn't owe me anything for what I used it for. I mean, I've easily overexceeded the capacities on utility trailers, so I would never want to go through that on something I'm going to be living in, so, but yeah, all good.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask the questions. Let me ask you one question. I've seen, and I built a trailer, had a trailer built by a trailer manufacturer that would this was a 20-foot tiny house with two skids on it, and they built it with two L angles. Actually, there was one L angle with that went the full 20-foot length, and the other L angle went less than 20 feet, I guess for more stability. And they also had cross members and on it. Didn't have any outriggers because the floor joists of the tiny house were, built on top of the skids, and the skids bolted to these L angles. And theoretically, you could unbolt and use that trailer for a different. Have you ever designed anything like that?
I would have to see what this trailer looks like. We generally don't use angle iron. We used it for a period of time as cross members on like a sub for 12 feet long and 10 feet long trailers. We would use them in around 2015 for a 7,000 pound capacity, really light duty, small tiny house trailer. So we don't use that. I don't think it's really best as a main frame to resist the kind of loads a tiny house would put on for angle iron. So I would have to see.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the in that build, a lot of the requirement was taken over by the skid. In other words, you can build a skid, a 20-foot skid. You can do a 4x6 main rail that's wood, and I think that's what they were relying on a lot. And then just putting the L angle underneath of that for a place to attach the axles to. That's kind of the way it played out. And the I've also seen and I do have a trailer that it has a removable tongue where you can unbolt the tongue from it if you want to take it off and unplug the lights and just remove the tongue. Have you seen any removable tongue type trailers?
We did it once on a trailer, and this was like a 40-foot by 10-foot that was back in like 2016. It took it was very, very heavy and challenging to unbolt and bolt on. And we just had to do a lot of extra work on that trailer to get it to be reinforced enough to be able to allow the tongue to be removed. So we don't do it anymore. And it's primarily because like we like to have the tongue, we do kind of what is called a wraparound style. So the tongue goes underneath the main frames and it kind of doubles up the main frames for a period of distance underneath the trailer for extra rigidity in that area of the trailer. So we don't really like having that, removable tongue is basically a bolted on piece, or, the members are bolted on at the front. So that is like a big, stress point. All that weight is bending on where it's going to be bolting. I know mobile home, trailers do it when they have their big I-beams and stuff like that. We experimented before on it. We still get requests for it, but we just don't do it anymore just because it's just a very complicated design. And I think it just kind of negates, any benefit of it. So, yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Well, in this case, it had basically a flat plate, two flat plates on the tongue at the front rail, and then going back to the main rails, it had another flat plate. So it did have two, each side had two points that with 4 bolts going onto it, but it didn't have the going down the main rail, that rigidity that you were talking about. It wouldn't have that rigidity to it. But yeah, just the thought of a different design. And I see, Leanne, you got your hand up, so I guess we better let you talk. Hello, Leanne.
I raised my hand for Jonathan. He has a question about insulation. You- Do you want to unmute yourself, Jonathan? Or do you want me to? What is your question
Yeah,
about insulation?
Sure, I can ask.
Hi.
Hi, I
Hello.
hope everyone's doing well. Feel free to, if this is taken in a different direction. I just was responding to the open opportunity to ask questions. I'm just kind of curious for the, the Tiny House Basics website, you kind of talk about how your design versus the traditional flange design is better for insulation.
Mhm.
Am I understanding that right? And I was
Yes.
wondering if you have an opportunity to dive a little more into that. Because it seems like you still have all the metal bars that are in contact with the floor. And so how do you think about that?
Yeah. Am I able to screen share at all? Because I do have a picture I can
Yeah.
kind of chat. Okay, let's see.
It's down at the bottom. You should see a green area. It says share screen.
Okay.
See it right next to chat?
Yeah, I gotta change my privacy. Yes, I guess apparently. Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's making me quit and reopen. I'd have to quit exit out of Zoom to do it.
You want me to go to your website?
Yeah, or I can
Is that what
email
you're-
you a picture. Can I email you this picture? Then
Oh, sure. Yeah.
or you can go to the website actually, because it's right there on the front page and screen share it, and then I can chat about it.
Okay. Hold on a moment.
Are you guys, I'm going to take this moment to ask, is anybody going to the Pinellas Park show this weekend?
Heck yeah.
Yay! All right.
Not
Well,
me
you got-
personally.
Are you guys going to have that's where I was born and raised, actually, in that area. Are you guys going to have a tent up or something at the show?
Yeah, we're gonna have a booth and I'm gonna be speaking sometime there. I don't know which day, but I'll be on
Yay!
for about 45 minutes.
Well, I'm
And we'll
glad.
talk about-
That'll be exciting to meet you.
And we'll talk about, the ASTM initiative and Colorado and some of the other things that current events in the tiny house world. So yeah, there you go.
If there's anything, I'm going to be going down on Friday and staying through Monday, because that's, like I said, my hometown. If there's anything I can help with, please, Leanne has my contact information.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it, Catherine.
You're welcome, sir.
All right. Go ahead, Joshua.
Click on trailers.
Yeah, no, this is good. This front page,
Okay.
actually scroll down a little bit too. So you can kind of see the trailer design right here. It's nice to know that 64 degrees and sunny where you are, Leanne. I'm jealous.
Sorry.
So our trailer design as seen right here, we allow you to use the full width of the trailer subfloor and insulate it uniformly. And if you scroll down a little bit more, we kind of have an us first them kind of picture.
Let me move these faces out of the way. Okay.
I think it's the next picture down.
There.
Yeah. So on
Right.
the picture on the right, the flange style trailer, it has this, you can only, oops, I'm sorry.
Just X out of that one.
Okay, there should be no more pop-ups. All right. So there's two different style of trailers. There's the full width subfloor like ours, or the flange style, which is on the right-hand side. The flange style, whether it's Iron Eagle or another manufacturer, with this one pictured as an Iron Eagle, they require you to build a 6x2, wooden subfloor, drop it inside the trailer, then it'll be flush with the top of the deck, and you'll have a flat surface area where you could then lay your plywood subfloor. The flange style, as shown, the outer perimeter of the trailer is an uninsulated space. So that is open to the elements. You can't insulate that. That is an angle iron, actually, is how they do their flange. Iron Eagle, I think it's like a 3 or 4 inch wide angle iron. other manufacturers use a 7-inch or a 7-inch wide flange that you can't insulate. On our full width subfloor like this, whether you get the optional flashing or not, you're able to insulate in between every cross member, and the whole entire subfloor is uniformly insulated from the full width. So you're not going to have any type of mold issues at the corners around the perimeter of your rough framing. You're able to insulate fully that width of the trailer. And yes, if you wanted to add additional insulation too, you can, or additional separation between the trailer metal frame and the wood subfloor, you could do a foam sill sealer on top of the steel before you lay your plywood subfloor. Most commonly, people are doing 3/4 inch plywood subfloor, which is perfectly adequate for 16-inch spacing on the cross members. You can't even do a thicker wood subfloor, like an inch, inch and an eighth plywood subfloor. And the plywood subfloor can be directly glued and or just glued and screwed, or just screwed to the trailer deck on the left, and you start framing up your walls from there. So the two different big styles is like, we're able to insulate the full width, faster start to framing. The flange style trailer requires you to build a wooden subfloor, drop it in, and then you still are going to have that uninsulated space. You will have way more better insulation on the inside, but you are not going to have any insulation on that perimeter of the outside of the trailer. So that's
Can I ask a follow-up? And I hope this question is not taken the wrong way. It's just curiosity. It kind of seems like your design on the left is, given metal's an extremely good conductor of heat.
Mhm.
That to me looks like a radiant floor heating design, where you've basically brought the heat across the entire floor in many areas. Like, have you done a thermal study of, I understand that you're getting insulation or more insulation on the 6 inches or so on the side, but I'm curious if there's been a thermal study of, the different thermals, because it kind of looks like you have like this is like radiant heating effectively on the left. Does that make sense? I'm asking it. Please don't take it the wrong way. I'm just trying to understand the engineering behind it.
No, I don't take it the wrong way at all. No, it's a good question. We've kind of gone based off of experience and years in the thousands of trailers we've built this style. And we've shipped these trailers up, a lot of our trailers in Alaska to, warmer climates like Hawaii, colder Michigan, Eastern Seaboard. And this is still the predominant, most popular width. And even, this style, the full width subfloor, and feedback based on customers that have been living in these for, whether it's 6 months to a year, because we do keep in contact with past customers and their experiences with their build and everything like that. And so everything that our data is really based on just real world feedback from customers that have done certain types of construction and how that trailer is holding up and stuff like that. And it wasn't just like, oh, we are gonna, we're just gonna try this and we'll see how it works out. It was really because, like, in the earlier days, the flange style was it's still an easier trailer to build, because you're just really building a utility trailer, welding on flanges on the outside, and then you're like, hey, it's a tiny house trailer. In the early days, in like 2014, we were doing the research on it. There was a good amount of people that were starting to, these mold issues were starting to pop up. Yes, you did have a really good insulated interior, between the wheel wells, but that outer perimeter where it's the walls was the problem. And we've seen that personally, on doing, using a flange style before, long time ago. And so really the decision we can do anything. And we do have one client in Texas that still likes their flange style, a metal fabricator or whatever, or a steel frame company. So we'll do it for them. But predominantly the feedback is this full width subfloor like this provides a more uniform, warm floor, insulated space than that exposed flange style. So it's really just based off experience and feedback with that style. But but excellent question though.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you would like to add a couple of things, if you put your sill seal down, obviously glue's not going to help you out. If you put the thermal break down, you don't want to glue your plywood to the sill seal. That's not going to do much. And second of all, there is a rigid foam, not your normal RMAX, half-inch, 1-inch foam that you buy at Home Depot, but there's a rigid foam that does have capability of not being compressed when weight's put on it. And you could put on there as a thermal break in addition to whatever insulation you have that would only add half-inch, 3/4, or an inch, whatever you put on it underneath of your plywood. That's another possibility if you're concerned about thermal bridging of the metal through the plywood into the house.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is we're doing box tube on this trailer design. And so the box tube, sandwiched among, all the insulation inside of it, it is going to be, it's not going to stay exactly the same as ambient temperature, but, it's going to hold on to cold longer, but it's trailing much closer to ambient temperature and the heat fluctuations than you would get on a 1/4-inch steel flange that is 100% exposed to the elements. 1/4-inch steel is, if you've ever seen it or even just look on a measuring tape, how thick that is. 1/4-inch steel is very, very thick. When that chills down, it takes forever to come back to, ambient temperature. So being that we are doing a box tube style frame, it's trailing not as far behind as the ambient temperature or the insulation around it than you would on something that is like a much thicker flat piece of steel. So that's really a lot of the thought behind it as well. And in just a practical aspect, it's held true on being able to have a much warmer subfloor, and just, there's always that balance of dealing with thermal bridging. I mean, if we keep battling against it, we'll eventually just have no room inside the tiny house for people if we're just constantly battling it. So it's that, just finding that right balance of, having minimal thermal bridging, but being able to, create kind of a uniform insulated subfloor, if that makes any sense.
Very good, very good. Well, guys, we're kind of at the end of our time here. Are there any more questions before I turn it back over to Leanne? If there is, raise your hand or put it in the chat. If not, then I'm going to turn everything back over to Leanne. Let her wrap it up and bring us out. And thanks again, Joshua, for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. And Eric, where did his comment go? Hello, Joshua. This is Eric, the SIP wall shell builder in Texas. We have spoken several times. Would love to work with you in your Texas production.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I need to get back to you on email, but yeah, I still want to chat about that.
We've got,
right,
thank you.
Does everybody know how to get in contact with Joshua if you're interested in a trailer?
You can go to our website at tinyhousebasics.com, or you could shoot us an email, which is tinyhousebasics@gmail.com, and we'll help you out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua, for spending the last hour with us. We learned a lot, I'm sure, and it's Monday, so we really thank everyone for taking time out of your busy day to join us for our Tiny Talks. And tomorrow, I'm not sure who we're going to have tomorrow night. We've had a medical emergency on our speaker, but we will be here, same time, same place, and we will have an agenda of some kind for you guys. So tune in, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Stay warm, stay cool, whatever. And we appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you so much.
Night.
Thank you. Bye now.